To my dear friend who lives in the world beside mine, I am typing this in the soft blue of early evening. The city outside my window is busy with small voices and steady work, and I want to tell you why. A few minutes ago, the bees at the south wall asked for a 12-minute corridor along the alley. They said the wind bends the scent of the rosemary and they do not want to bump into the sparrows. I posted the request on the neighborhood board, and the sparrows agreed with grace. This kind of moment is ordinary for us now, yet it still feels like a miracle. You would laugh at how serious our street meetings have become. Last week, a magpie brought a list of shiny objects the flock promises not to steal. In return, we keep a small tray of mirror chips by the fountain and sweep them every evening. A child wrote the sign that says, "Please take only what your heart can carry," and the magpie read it twice. I know you like stories with stakes, so let me begin with a trial that changed our river. An otter collective filed for protection from the heavy thrum of the new dam. They said the noise broke the flow of their talk and scattered their family along the banks. The court heard recordings where two brothers tried to plan a hunt and lost each other mid-sentence. The judge kept asking simple questions, and that helped all of us think clearly. What counts as a voice? How long must a pause be for respect? When is a home only a place, and when is it a pattern of sound that threads the years? The final ruling ordered speech bridges along the river that soften the low roar and carry clear channels for talk. I stood on the walkway and heard the water, the otters, and the old stone all speaking at once, and I cried. You may wonder how we handle meals when every life can speak. Our restaurants switched to treaty menus that tell the story of each dish. The mussels are available because they asked to be harvested after a certain age, and the bay stays clean because of the deal. The goats asked to mentor local school children and lead brush clearing walks on cool mornings. The kitchen keeps a bell for pause, and once each hour everyone listens to a minute of quiet as a sign of thanks. It felt strange in the beginning, but now it feels like washing your hands before you cook. The first night I ordered the treaty stew, the chef said you should meet the gardener who negotiated the herbs, and I did. Work also changed in ways that would surprise you. The Metro hired RAT4 workers for tunnel safety. Their hazard notes are short and blunt, and they are never wrong. A 4 worker named Lilt flagged a warm spot in a support pier that no sensor noticed. Repairs began before dawn, and commuters never knew a disaster had been avoided. The transit app now shows a little badge that says inspected by the night shift, and everyone smiles on the train. I wave into the dark when I pass the place where Lilt filed the note, and I whisper a thank you to the stones as well. The first time I spoke with whales, I felt as small as a raindrop and as wide as the sea. A singer from the Outer Bay sent a sentence that no one could fit into a single diagram. It was part map, part tide, part family tree, and part promise that will not make sense until next winter. We learned that not every idea has a direct path into our ears. Some meanings ask us to slow down for seasons and not seconds. Our laws now include the unknowns clause to remind us to use care when we think we understand everything. That clause saves us from pride and keeps us honest, and I hope you would approve. Daily life carries gentler changes that matter just as much. Our lampposts listen only when someone asks to be heard, and they glow when they enter a talk. The glow tells passers-by a conversation is in progress, and the polite thing is to give space. When storms blow in, the posts forward urgent messages to the council and to volunteer teams nearby. We use short words for speed, and we do not play with drama in a crisis. The river said slow, the swifts said roof, the foxes said fence gap open, and teams moved in minutes. There is dignity in clear talk and quick hands. Children are the best translators because they are not embarrassed by gaps. They ask, "What do you call this?" and "What do you call me?" and they wait for answers. In class, they take turns as interlocutors for the species who visit the school. I watched a girl learn that the word home can be a mouth of a burrow and a scent trail in the air, all at once. She drew both on paper, and then she smiled with her whole body. When she went outside for lunch, she checked the grass for paths with more care, and that made me proud. You asked me once if faith changed when voices multiplied. The short answer is yes, and also no. Many people feel deeper awe because we hear more of the world alive and alert. At the same time, we still tell stories about why we are kind and why we keep promises. Some congregations sing with birds at dawn and with whales in the evening by the shore. The songs feel less like performances and more like shared duties. A funeral for a whale became a community day for the bay and the hills, and I kept the program as a quiet treasure. I do not want this letter to sound like a tour, so let me tell you about my street on an ordinary Tuesday. A dog named Pen filed a request for a lower curb at the corner because her hips are stiff this year. The council approved the change and scheduled the work for the same week. Pen also recorded a living will that says she would like a last walk under the plum trees and a seat by the canal at sunset. Her family cried when they signed, yet we were grateful to know her wishes as clearly as a map. On the day she wanted the seat by the canal, the city posted small lanterns, and the pigeons kept a gentle orbit above. Pen told one last joke about how humans throw sticks, and then insist that the dog is the one who loves to fetch. We laughed with tears on our cheeks, and watched the light slip behind the warehouse roofs. It was simple, and it was right. There are comedy moments too, because life insists on joy. A council meeting learned that local squirrels had been rerouting small flags from the park into their nests. The squirrels agreed to return the flags if we supplied bright ribbon that does not pull loose in wind. 1 week later, our trees looked like they were dressed for a spring party. Tourists asked if the ceremony had begun, and the squirrels replied that it had always begun. I must admit that the hardest part is learning when not to speak. Translation gives us access, but access is not ownership. We write our public signs with this in mind. The sign outside our rookery says listen and leave a gift of time, and people obey. On the long footpath by the marsh, we post the tides and also the nesting calendar, and runners change their routes without complaint. People still forget now and then, and our rangers speak with patience and firm kindness. My work as an ombudsperson is mostly to ask good questions at the right speed. Are we solving the complaint that was filed? Or are we chasing a fear that never arrived? Did the fix help for a week and then cause trouble for a season? Will this design speak clearly to small bodies as well as tall ones? Can this crossing hold a beetle and a bus in the same hour? Good questions slow problems down into pieces that we can hold. In my office, we keep a shelf of small objects from past agreements, and I dust them on Fridays. I promised myself I would tell you about the bees and the dam and the dog, and I have done that. I also wanted to tell you about the people who had to change their minds in front of neighbors and keep their dignity. A builder stood on the riverbank and admitted that the first concrete mix was wrong for the Otter Channel. He explained the fix with simple words and no excuses, and the crowd applauded. A chef admitted that her menu harmed local eels during their journey, and she switched her recipes before the season turned. She hosted a lunch to thank the fishers who helped her learn, and that lunch tasted like relief. The technology fades into the background once trust grows. At first, we stared at devices and doubted every syllable. Then we learned to ask follow-up questions and keep records we can share. We use plain logs and agreed terms, and any citizen can read them. If a sentence confuses us, we mark it and return when the season or the moon gives us context. Some of my best days end with the note return later written in large letters on my screen. You would love our library because the index has paths for smell and taste alongside sound and sight. The mushroom shelf asks for a cool fog every second afternoon, and the staff obliges with joy. Children help reshelve seeds from the exchange and learn the names that gardens use to speak of rain. In a quiet corner, the archives hold stories collected from households where humans and dogs or cats share long years of talk. The stories are not grand, but they shine like water in morning light. Love sounds very practical when it is clear and honest. There are still sharp debates. Fisher families argue with coastal councils about quotas that match both hunger and promise. Farmers argue with migratory flocks about field access after long flights. Young activists ask why we move so slowly when the stakes feel so high. Elders remind us that a rushed promise is a broken promise waiting to happen. I sit in circles with all of them and keep a pot of tea ready. It helps to have warm cups in hand when we ask each other for courage. I have not forgotten the question you always ask, which is, what did this change in you? I am softer in how I step and quicker in how I apologize. I praise more and I complain less. I say please to the wind when I ask it to leave the laundry alone. I have learned that the map of a life is a chorus and not a line. I say the names of streets with care because each name holds small agreements. The city teaches me how to be a better neighbor every day. You might wonder whether romance thrives or wilts when truth gains more channels. It thrives, my friend. People flirt with gentle wit because they cannot hide behind muddled phrases anymore. Lovers bring small treaties to each other as gifts, and the best ones are funny and generous. A couple I know signed a balcony treaty that sets quiet hours for the local bats, and also for their own work calls. They said that their favorite sound is the rush of wings when the sunset hits just right. I like that answer very much. I should tell you about one last scene before I sign off. We held a night market under strings of warm bulbs, and every stall had a story card for its wares. The spice vendor told us that the wind carries the voice of cinnamon low and steady, and that we should grind slowly to keep the tone. A seamstress sold jackets with pockets for tiny fruit, meant for walkers who offer snacks to traveling birds. A choir sang pieces written by a whale who had passed the bay the year before. The notes moved like a tide, and the crowd swayed without prompting. I stood there and knew that this is what it feels like when a place becomes a promise kept. I hope my letter lands in your evening, like a kind hand on your shoulder. Please forgive me if I sounded certain where I should have sounded curious. Living with many voices means learning that silence can also be a good answer. I am still learning, and I plan to keep learning for the rest of my days. When I grow tired, I read the log from the day the dam opened its speech bridges, and I breathe easier. There is much more to share, yet I should not crowd your night. If you write back, tell me about one small thing you changed this week to make room for another life. Tell me about a window you opened, or a flower you let finish its seed, or a street you crossed more slowly. Tell me what you heard when you waited. I will keep your note by the kettle and read it before sunrise. From your friend who lives in the world next to yours, I send my care and my thanks. Thank you for listening all the way to the end of my letter today. If this story moved you, please tap like because it helps more friends find our little corner. If you want more letters from my world, please subscribe and ring the bell so you will not miss the next visit. I would love to read your thoughts, so please leave a comment and tell me what part you will remember tomorrow. If you would like to support the channel, you can use the QR code in the lower right of the video or the link in the description, and I am grateful for any help. In the description, you will also find links to other series that are very different from this one, and I hope you enjoy those as well. Thank you again for being here, and please come back for the next letter from the world beside yours.